What's up, friends and fellow humans? Mark Matzeldelaflor here with another Guardian Grange podcast. This one is going to be speaking with founder of Project B, Anya Pechko, and we talk about some of her work, which is helping people detach from technology and getting back to our real lives, which is somewhat ironic, seeing as how we're pushing this stuff out over technology platforms and social media, but we're dealing with the modern world and we're using these tools to put out good information at the end of the day. So it's going to be an interesting episode. Talk about the effects of screen time on child's eyes and mind, fast talking, narcissistic values versus community values, isolation versus teamwork, Twitter mentality, psychoactive therapy, time blocking, and on and on. So before I keep rambling, we're just going to go ahead and get into it. But before we do that, just want to give a shout out to the sponsor of this episode, Dr. Bronner's, the purest, all fair trade ingredients, regeneratively organic certified soap and natural products. So go check them out, drbronner's.com, and let's get it. Welcome, Anya Pechko. Is that how am I saying that right?
Yes, awesome. You are.
Awesome. And where is that name from?
From Russia.
Okay, Russia. Nice. Yeah, it's seems like a strong, elegant Russian name.
I was raised in Russia, and I came here when I was 11. I've been here for many years.
Oh wow! So how did you come to arrive here?
My grandparents immigrated to the Soviet Union in '78, and then we joined them in '88. So we were, just my parents wanted freedom, and because we're Jewish, freedom of speech, freedom of choice, and freedom of religion. Great.
Yeah,
that would be
for sure. Yeah. Maybe we'll do another one on that because that's people tend to lose sight of the value of freedom. Even though, not saying everything's perfect anywhere, but there's definitely a lot of benefit to being where we are. And kind of what this is about is we're always trying to make life better through conscious conversation and just being real about stuff. So when you came here when you're 11, what set you on the path that you came to be where you're now the founder of Project B? And why don't you tell us what Project B is about and how you came to found that?
Build and launch it. I think my childhood kind of puts me in position to really reflect on how I grew up versus how I see the younger generation is growing up. And even I'm a Gen Xer. So even, and I think we're the same.
Yeah, similar. Yeah, right around that age.
We're in the same kind of age group. And, I think there's a huge disconnect that we're experiencing right now. And so I launched my platform to kind of raise awareness about the importance of real social connection and the importance of time, right? How much time we lose, how much of our lives we use on technology. And I launched Project B in March of 2020. And then about, 4 weeks later, we were in a lockdown. So it was very hard to tell people to stay off technology. But that was the only option to stay connected. And in some senses, I really feel that the technology helped us to stay as sane as we did because people were so used to being isolated already. We just didn't know that. But by 2020, I know all of us, each and every one of us, has already lost 2 or 3 hours lost in our phones on a couch. So when 2020 happened, it was really horrible. But we had these tools that became, very important. And I think this, on Zoom and just able to connect and have that type of connection was really great. And so what I've spent in the last kind of 2.5 years is, this is what I've been kind of reading all these books, and a lot of them play those 2 minute shows. It's one of those full shows. It's all about dopamine and what I call technology addiction. And it's people in my space, people in digital wellness don't like to use these words, but that's what it is, right? We're addicted to the technology. We're also addicted to the dopamine. And I think we're also addicted and are very disillusioned in our real life by how fast everything is in our phone and how slow everything is in real life. And there's a big disconnect of how everything is really fast in the phone, just access to information, wanting to go somewhere, wanting to check something. And, life is just not like that. And so that's one of the things that I've saw since the pandemic. And then another really big thing, obviously, is our social relationships, our real social relationships, how much they have suffered because of the phones and because of the disconnect and because of the pandemic.
Yeah, I mean, I'm on board with that. Definitely the speed of information and also like highly emotionally charged things, whether that's just like marketing to get someone to like seek some pleasurable response, or like news where it's just all super negative, and like there's these swings that happen in rapid succession over technology, and just information overload. And what I've noticed is similar, where people check out of real life and they're checked into whatever the technology platform is. It really doesn't matter. It's all the same stuff, and it's like, content even has become shorter and shorter and shorter. Like now it's, if you're not capturing someone's attention in like 30 seconds or even less, like a TikTok or something, they're just consuming stuff, and it's creating like a fragmentation of sorts, because there's no cohesive conversation. Whereas if you sit, like we're using technology right now, but it is a double-edged sword. Like it can be used for good, or just like any tool. But we definitely have an addiction as I wouldn't say a society, but like the world, a lot of the world is addicted to technology, because what it does offer like the ability to connect, but we're not used to having, it's like fast food for conversation. So you can get a lot of it, you can eat a lot of it, you can consume a lot of it, you can get like halfway kind of fulfilled, but then you always need more and more. So then you're going back to scrolling through feeds or, posting rants. It's like the Times Square kind of effect has been going on for quite a while, where people talk a lot about what they're being fed from the technology. And at the end of the day, like the local community connections, which is what Guardian Grange is all about, is getting divided and dissolved, and there's less and less and less of it. Anytime I'm around like a fire or something with friends, the point always comes up like, man, this is so relaxing and cool, and like we should do more of this. And every single human being has bloodlines that go back to people sitting around the fire, and it's been replaced from the TV to the computer to the digital phone. It's like this little light that's artificial and fake, but it gives you all these stories. And the contrast there of like sitting around the fire telling stories is so much more wholesome, holistic. Like people's traumas can be, expressed and worked through in that setting, whereas it's really difficult or impossible when someone's isolated and they're just basically talking out they're alone, but they're talking to everyone. It's a weird dichotomy there. So yeah, I really dig that.
I'm really happy you brought that up, because one of the things that I've been meditating, kind of thinking about, is I think I think people are kind of a little bit lost in this narcissistic, I'm such an individual and I'm so unique state, that we have forgotten where we come from and what our basic needs are. And it's fire, right? It's like we need to have food, basic food, not opulent food. We need to have warmth, we need to have security, and we need each other. And solitary confinement is the worst punishment for men. And I think we've isolated ourselves in many, many ways. And it's not just the phones anymore. Now it's our learned and taught behavior. We multitask. We don't, right? Like, so our brains are not meant to multitask at all. And so the only thing we can multitask at are biological functions. So right now I'm speaking and I'm breathing and blinking my eyes at the same time. And I can also walk right now and talk to you. Although some people can't, right? It'll be harder for them. But we're so overwhelmed. And so when you talk to people, even in person, the distractive minds, right? Because our attention span is really shrank. That's why the commercials you were talking about, you have to catch somebody in 30 seconds, because our critical and cognitive thinking has really been impacted by the computer and its speed and our inability to be mindful and slow enough to get the data by ourselves now. So it's an issue, and it's a bigger issue with children, because children's brains don't, your frontal cortex doesn't fully mature or harden to maturing time, right? That's why young boys that play football are more prone to injury. And so when you and I look at that screen, our eyes kind of move like this. It's like we're looking at the shape and at the surrounding, but we're looking at the screen. Children, their eyes kind of like dart around because there's so much happening on the screen. So there's movement and there's sound and there's depth, and so it's just they're too young. And the brain thinks way too fast. I mean, that's like the most basic way I can describe it. And it's flooded with dopamine. And so now we're seeing a rise in ADD and ADHD. And, by the way, the reason I'm talking so slowly is because that's another thing that people do. I've done a bunch of podcasts, and I don't know why we now have to speak so fast. And then right as you say something, whoever's responding, they have to jump right away, right? Like, there's got to be a moment where we think about what we're going to say next, right? And then when we express ourselves, the person we're talking to has to be able to understand the information, process it, and respond. So there's like this whole way in which we are slowly not functioning the way we used to. And I think that is a really big piece with what is happening to our mental health. Aside from, it's like the perfect storm, there are other things. And so one of the ways I try to personally address this, and one of the reasons I think Reconnect is because you are as well, right? Like, we talked about the problem, right? Like, okay, so what do we do? And, people love hacks, because nobody has any, nobody wants to read or kind of listen to a 2.5-hour podcast. They just like, okay, what can I do really fast? And so I think that we can really pivot the world, like, really at least make a dent in it if we help our own communities, where we can literally reach and touch our neighbor and say, listen, this is what I'm working on. Do you have 4 people that are interested? And they'll have 4 people, and those people will know some people. And that is the best way with what I think people can start helping. And, I'm on LinkedIn a lot, and I see these rants that people go on. And
where is that, on LinkedIn? Is that where you said?
Yeah. And so I post, there are communities right now in every city, every secondary, everywhere across America that need help. There are children that don't read in our communities. There are veterans that need help. There are disabled people. There are people that have been isolated for the past 2.5 years. And so we can collectively really make an impact. And as far as the technology, I think the important things to do is try to disconnect with how much time we spend on our phones, right? So right now as I'm talking to you, I don't know where my phone is. And I really try to use the phone mindfully. I do Audible, I do podcasting, I have I have a camera, which is why I use my phone a lot, and then I talk on the phone, and I use Zoom to connect with friends. I think not taking your phone to the bathroom is really important, and I think people will find it really surprising how much time a day they can save, how much time off the phone they can save a day if they don't drive their phone into the bathroom.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. I'm definitely guilty of taking my phone into the bathroom, it's like you said, that's like signs that you have some kind of addiction to something, right? It'd be like if you're taking a beer into the bathroom or something. It's similar because it is a tool, and mindful use of that tool is important because it does have it can have an empowering effect, but how we've been seeing it used is to disempower, really. It's been disempowering or draining energy away from people, used to like market in like even the most advanced ways, which, there's a pro and con there, but the science of marketing has gotten so crazy, like precise, that people really don't have a chance if they don't know what's going on when they're consuming a piece of content and how they're getting sucked in and fragmented away. And I think you talked about the fast talk and space in talking. It is, I would guess, because I don't have any data to go off of, but I would definitely guess that it's because so much information is flying by, and so you're trying to like get your information in on that screen or that recording, and so everyone feels like they're in a rush. And you also mentioned the children's eyes on the mind screen, and our daughter is just 12 weeks old, this week, and since day one she's been darting, we're very observant, soaking up all the visual stimulus around. And even if there's not much going on in the room, there's a lot of stuff to look at, shapes, colors.
Right. Naturally, right? And I think it's so interesting. Albert Einstein has this incredible quote. I'm a big quote person, and it says, if you want your children to be intelligent, read them fairy tales. If you want your children to be very intelligent, read them more fairy tales. And so I was trying to figure out how SpongeBob and these cartoons that here I see on TV now, although I don't really know what, but and the connection, how that related to me. And so I think the content it's what you were saying, right? The content which we now give to people I think it's to minimize their experience. It's not to optimize anything about our human condition. And so I think people themselves have to find a way out of here, because the marketing firms and the technology and the VR that's coming, and metaverse, where a lot of people are going to live, right? Not all of us, but there's a huge population that is going to live in a metaverse with Uber Eats and Amazon delivery and work from home, and everybody glued to their chairs in 4 years, literally. And we see that, like, there's children right now, a lot of kids, a lot of young boys have issues with their eyes, their muscles in the back of their eyes haven't developed, because when you stare like this into the screen when you're playing video games, the back of your eye muscle doesn't use or strengthen properly. And you have to do the same EMR therapy where your eyes start back. I mean, this is really, really crazy stuff. And so I think that the people I work with, I have a coaching practice. I help people detach from technology, and I give them back their time in ways that they can engage in things that they love. There's this great book, Adam Alter, Irreversible. irresistible. And in that book, this was written pre-pandemic, he quotes is, we spend quarter of our life on our phones. That's pre-pandemic. That's quarter of our lives. That's an insane amount of time to be, to spend on tech. And so a lot of the work I do, I work with parents who really care about their children. And so it really helps to have that as the motivating factor, then for me to be able to help the parents to change their behavior. Because I think ultimately children learn by watching and observing, and they will do and they will act how you act. And so, that's kind of some of the stuff that I talk about.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think that's extremely important work, and definitely counter to like where humans are being pushed and driven towards by marketing firms, and just a lot of that energy, because it's very profitable for people to push content through digital media. So it's kind of like it's a bit of an irony, but not really, that we're using technology to get the information out there. But I like how you're guiding people away from technology and back into, I just call it getting back to reality. And it's very difficult, especially like for myself running an organization, and you have to reach through the noise to like, it feels like reaching into the matrix to pull people out back to look at reality, but you have to step in there to begin with. So it's a lot. It's a big chaotic mess.
It's a lot because it's not healthy. It's not a natural way for human beings to connect. And we have certain we're a really advanced biological system. And we know what we need. We need food, we need sleep, we need shelter, and we need other human beings. I read something the other day, and I think this was so profound. I don't even know where I read it. It's just in my mind now. This student asked the evolutionary biologist, when did humans become civilized? Was it, with religion or history? And that's kind of what the student said. And the evolutionary biologist said no. The first time when we know that the world had become civilized, when we're finding people with huge femurs, right? So if you were alone before, you were without a tribe, and you broke your femur, you would die, because you can't get anywhere. You can't get water, you can't get food, animals come, you can't run away. And so when we started seeing femurs heal, that's when we realized that I broke my femur, you're gonna come, you're gonna pick me up, take me to a shelter, give me water, give me food. And that's where we need to go. That's where we belong, right? We need each other. We need other humans to be healthy. And how we used to raise our children and our families. It was all through, it takes a village, right? It was, we had very traditional roles. Again, it's like a separate podcast, but really, if you think about it, it was very traditional. Men were out hunting, and women were in the village collectively, raising the kids and weaving the social fabric of society. I mean, even now, traditionally, and I'm a traditionalist, by the way, so I don't, that's kind of, I'm very proud of it. I love that type of the yin and yang, and so men were the hunter-gatherers, and so within that, there was this kind of system that worked, but that system was connected by social tribes, and we had elder people passing on the knowledge and wiseness through the years that they had acquired to the younger generation. And we had very traditional ways in which we lived, and we took care of our elders, we respected them, right? Like there was a system, it's civilization, it's how we have evolved as human beings. And that system is now, it's fractured, And I think the way to fix it in ways that is attainable is for people to kind of go back into this basic mode of, connection. And so it becomes less about marketing, less about Instagram, less about being caught up in all of that, and more about cooking your own food. I mean, you know this, right? Making your own food and having your hands in the soil, because that's really healthy. It's incredibly nurturing for our system, right? Because we know, and I think I told you, right? So this is, I read a lot. This is definitely the best book I read this year. And I read a lot of books. This book, Inner Engineering by Suguru. Oh my God, he talks about soil, right? And he talks about, we know the difference between dead soil, like, right? It's like all brown and dry.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Fresh, green soil when it's like all gets into your crevices and nails and all.
Oh, yeah.
And so it's important, it's important to make your own food. To if you can't grow it, fine. Go to the farmer's market, buy it, cut it, slice it, salt it, put basil on it, smell it, taste it, sit and, eat it. I tell people all the time now, everything is so expensive. Going to a restaurant is so expensive. Sit and enjoy your meal. Don't be on the phone. You're spending, you're paying $30 for bread and cheese right now. It's called grilled cheese. Enjoy it, right? Enjoy it. This dinner is costing so much money. And when I speak to people, when I say all these little things, it seems to resonate with them, it's what I'm doing has become a lot easier in the last 6 months than it has in the last year and a half, because again, it was very hard to tell people, disconnect and send your kids outside to play with other kids during COVID. A little bit less where I am now, which is in South Carolina, but I moved to New York in July of 2020. And, everywhere I think in America, they closed parks, they took out basketball hoops, beaches were closed.
Yeah, it was pretty insane. Like they tried to shut down literally nature in the world, the outside air.
You needed it the most.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. From the stress, sunlight, wind, like all the holistic actual components of health that were just cut off, and then created a more sedentary existence, which didn't help anything. I also, yeah,
going into the woods and dipping into being a polar bear and getting vitamin D from the sun and putting your feet in the sand and laughing. And, when you rub sand on your body and it exfoliates, it's like there's so much healing in that. But that's not where that's not where, something wants us to be right now.
Yeah, so we can just say the industrialized system does not like free things. and nature is a very giving, beautiful, biological technology, if you even want to call it technology, because I like to use that contrast because it's better than any technology that exists. But because no one can control it and put a patent on it. I mean, they do in so many ways, but they really can't. And because they can't do it, then they try to separate and then give us an artificial kind of version. And that's what I look at. Even like the word civilization, like to me, civilization is an extraction of community and rebranding of it and saying like, oh, well, we're all this one civilization. Well, that discounts and diminishes the communities and the individuals who have actual physical bonds and relationships. And I think, the ideal size for a village, they say, is about 150 people, where you could actually know every one of those people. And outside of that, you're getting to, you don't have the relationships as strong. And it's a big problem because people have their kind of communities extended where maybe they're with like-minded people, but they're very far away. So in their local lives, for a lot of people, other than like social interactions that maybe will bars. I haven't gone out to bars since before COVID, but if people are doing that, or whatever interaction they're engaging with, going out to a restaurant, there's no actual community there. Or if people are going to like a town hall or some kind of political event, the community aspect is hijacked by some other agenda that has nothing to do with anyone.
Yeah, it's hijacked by tech. So we got to rebuild the community. And so we have to rebuild the community in our own backyards, over food, over fire chats, over music, over connection. And, that's kind of what I'm doing. I mean, I host brunches here. I had a brunch here on Sunday. I had, 15, 17 people here. I don't really allow people to use phones in my house. And if you want to check your texts, from your kids, whatever, that's fine. But I get pretty upset. And so there was just one person who kind of kept on being on the phone. I need to clear this. Not going to happen again because they're not to be invited back. So people came at 12:30 and left at 6:30. And we ate, we listened to music, we kind of, had some drinks and we circled around and just talked. And it was amazing. And make really good food, and it's really beautiful. It's really, really beautiful atmosphere, right? Because I think you have to engage people and really bring their senses. And so I think the only real diversion from technology is to create a better life experience. And so I think being interesting is really important. And I think being interesting today is hard because we don't really know anything, because the information we consume is in 150 letters. I don't know. I'm not on Twitter. I got kicked off Twitter for mine. It's just, it's a terrible platform. I think it's minimized our ability. First of all, I can't speak in 7 words. I don't really know. That's not, I read and I really love, making my brain stronger and more knowledgeable. And so I like to conversate with people that are like-minded and that they're passionate and they know stuff and they're interested. And a lot of people aren't. So I think the best way to do that is to help people comment. I think podcasts are incredible. I love Joe Rogan podcasts. I love Joe Rogan. Everybody he has on is really interesting, and most people who see his hat on, I've read their books. I read a great book by Pechko. The book's name is still English, which is incredible. It talks about all the stuff we're talking about right now. And I think podcast is really great. I think movement is really important. How people live, and I think physical. People have to physically start taking care of themselves. I think we've done enough of sitting at home behind computers. I think people have to go back to work. I think this work from home stuff has got to go away, because I think that's also I really understand all the people that have to commute and how they spend more time. Like, I get that, but we are not in a pandemic anymore, and we can't live our lives as if we are. And I think that we have a younger generation of all these interns who are just showing up in all these companies, and there's nobody in them. And I don't, we haven't talked about your background or my background, but I really wouldn't know how to do anything at all if I didn't learn it from people that were better, smarter, wiser, or older, more knowledgeable. And so I think we have to plug back into society and community. That's kind of, it's like it's very basic stuff. It's nothing that I talk about is like, wow, I've never heard of that before. Get up in the morning, make your bed, walk your dog, take a shower, go outside, talk to your neighbors, be of help, volunteer. One of the things I don't take my phone in stores or anything. And I always have interactions with people. The other day I saw a woman with her baby, like a 8 months old and 4 kids in tow, and I asked her if I can help her unpack her car to Trader Joe's. And she did it. She was just so surprised that I said that. And because I don't think we notice these things anymore. And I think if I was walking with my phone to my car, I wouldn't have been able to see her. So there's this whole disconnect that we now have because of our phones. I drove to a pharmacy the other day and I just was picking something up and I saw an older couple in a convertible looking for parking. And I screamed at them and I said, "Hey, I'm going to be a minute. You can park in my spot." And they were like, "Wow, thank you so much." But if I was with my phone, I wouldn't have seen that. And so if you go to CVS, if you're leaving your car, your truck at the CVS and you're walking in, leave the phone in the car for 5 minutes. And so it's these little things, baby steps that just like a little disconnect from.
Yep, it is. It's you're 100% right on, and it's part of the process is just getting people to see it, because there's a distraction going on, so people their focus is elsewhere, or their focus is divided and taken away, and that's why I like to call it a distraction, or even the concept of like a globalized world or globalization is really, it's presented as some kind of answer or solution, like, oh, we're all coming together to work for the world. But what that does is diminish the individual and the community and create this kind of so-called greater good that is no one's really actually associated with, beyond like a very small number of people who are creating the messaging and selling it to everyone in a package. And it creates like a very materialist, kind of hopeless, fearful, greedy energy that people are in. And the only cure to that, I say, or the antidote to that, is localism, like extreme localized focus, paying attention to, how healthy is your soil? What's your environment doing? Who are your neighbors and how are they doing? Not what's going on in, some place across the world that you've never been, or you wouldn't know about if it wasn't put in front of your face. And that is what's really pulling us apart, because now people are arguing about things that have nothing to do with where we are at or what we're doing. So the conversations, where you get into the Twitter fights like that, it's like the human being is reduced down to one sentence, as if there's nothing else to say beyond a little snippet, and then that's your whole value, and they promote that, and people get all these likes and followers for these little snippets that don't really say much of anything, or don't like plumb the depths of the nuanced reality that people are trying to like grasp and remedy in so many ways. I think a lot of people are trying it's all attempts to heal for the most part from something, but a lot of people can't put their finger on exactly what the issue is. And so when something's presented as, oh, here's the issue over here, then they just fan the flames and people cheer it, because it's like the whole mob mentality. Get up the pitchforks and the torches. That's the person, or that's the thing, that's the thought, that's the energy, that's the word that needs to be removed, silenced, or transitioned, transferred, whatever, corrupted. And it's a very chaotic way to go through life. And it makes sense why anxiety medications and depression and all these things are at an all-time high. I mean, if that system of helping people really worked, then since their inception, there would be less of that. So something else is very clearly off. If there's so many people who are on like certain, doing certain kind of substances or whatever, it's not working. And before those things came onto the scene, and before technology came onto the scene, families, communities were generally healthier. Some of those communities don't even exist to this day because they were so diluted and dissolved and wiped out. Some are hanging on by a thread, and others are, fighting just to remain how they've been for hundreds, thousands, or more years. And this kind of machinery has no compassion for any of it, because it's not bringing focus or attention or compassion or care to the community or to the individual. It's saying a lot of words, like going back to the globalized world, like oh, we're going to save the whole planet by ignoring every individual in every community and falling in line with like one message that comes from one group, which is controlling the narrative. And it's always dangerous because that one group, even with the best of intentions, doesn't know what's best for, a community, right? Like if you're in your town, no one in Indiana or something, no one in Washington is going to tell you what needs to happen in that town, like you already know is supposed to happen. And so it all comes down to us. We're the ones who have to awaken within our own community to do the work that needs to be done and not outsource it and depend on politician or an Instagram influencer or something like that. And that's why what I'm pushing is empowering of the people in local communities, individuals in local communities, to say that the leaders aren't out there. You're not going to vote for them. The leaders are yourself, standing out, doing little tasks. Yeah, like getting your hands dirty in a good way, growing some food, cooking some meals, having conversations, helping, all the things we've been talking about. Those little acts are actually heroic acts, and the very propagandized, very well marketed storylines of like, here's this one person and all these people are following along with what this person has to say and acting as minions, and therefore they're the hero. But what's going on is people are following idols at the end of the day instead of taking ownership and accountability and responsibility to realize who we are and what we're doing here. And I like to say this all the time, like a bear has its function in the wild, just like a fox does and a bird does. And the bear isn't, in Russia thinking about what the bears in, New Hampshire are doing, because it has no effect on the bear knows is very wise. And all the animals are, because they're paying attention to their local environment and their community. And that's how humans should be as well. It's how we're naturally designed to be. And our role in nature is to be good stewards of the land, to see like, oh, there's maybe a catastrophe or a deficiency, and we can move some soil over here, and we can maybe help move some animals in this direction and build up that soil health to become very rich and nourishing. Like you walk into any forest floor and you pull up some dirt and it's moist, dense with life, and things are growing from it, as opposed to you go into a tilled topsoil environment and it's dead.
I don't know. I was at a girlfriend's house yesterday. She just bought a house. It's a nice house, but the backyard is insane. And I went yesterday, and she had landscaping people there. And I brought my dog. She has a dog. And she had mentioned that they were going to, there were bugs. There were mosquitoes, whatever. And so she mentioned they were going to spray every day. And I said to her, oh, I wouldn't spray here because you have a dog, right? And she said, no, I'll be fine. And so I'm sitting there. I mean, I see it all the time. I don't pay for it, but I know my neighbors have cleaning crews that have to sweep the leaves. Leaves, for some reason, have to go somewhere. But why? Why do the leaves have to go somewhere? Why can't it be fertilizer for the soil that from the tree that they fall off? That's how it functions, right?
Yep.
But it's just, listen, I call that, it's like, that's the dark side of capitalism. I'm from a system. I was raised in a system where there were no commercial, because there was no marketplace. Nothing was being sold. So I grew up for 11 years of my life. I've never seen that before. I've never, and I'm from St. Petersburg, but I've lived there through, food lines and shortage of toilet paper, and we went to school 6 days a week, and we wore a uniform. And, I talk about that a lot in my facilitations, the importance of wearing a uniform. So here's you would think, what's the big deal? Like, who cares what people wear? When you are a young, impressionable child, right, and you go to first, second grade, whatever, you're, I don't know how old, 6, 7, 8 years old, and when you have to see the other kid, and you have to say, Dad, how come they look at your hat, they look at your shirt, they look at your watch, they look at your pants, they look at your book bag, they look at the shoes you drive. That's where we live. Versus you're wearing a uniform, and I'm looking at you, right? Because you're wearing the same clothes. And so it's these small things. So the system that we're in and what we value is just very, it's become this really crazy thing. Like we have commercials for 4-year-olds now, right? Because during cartoons, in the middle of those cartoons, there are commercials to buy them shit, which they don't need. Kids don't need. Kids need like the shapes toys, right? It's very important for them. All of this, when you put the square and the triangle and it doesn't work, it's very important for kids to physically have these things, not click on them on the iPad. But that's how, that's another separate, there's this, Peter Grange, he talks about, he's a psychologist. He's very old. He's like 80s. And so he talks about the eradication of play among American children in the past 50 years. And so children aren't being developed properly. They're not socializing with each other. They're not learning social cues at an early age and self-development, self-management, which other children teach them. So there's this whole system which is set up for our not our optimization, whatever call, our dismay or, whatever you want to call it. And so I think, I don't know, I'm not looking right now. I don't have a lot of faith in our leadership right now at the moment. And so people have to take their matters into, we have good leadership in some parts of our country. I'll say that. And a lot of others, it's just like, listen, I moved here from New York City, because a guy grabbed me on the street and I thought he was going to really hurt me. And I had lived in New York at that point for 21 years, and that has never happened to me. So this was in de Blasio COVID New York. And so we can't look at our, the help is not coming from there. The help is not coming from pharmaceutical companies. The help is not coming from all the marketing companies. It's just not coming. If people want help and they want something to change, they themselves, Leo Tolstoy is a Russian writer. He has this great quote, everybody wants to change the world, but nobody wants to change themselves. If people want to make the world a better place right now, starting tomorrow, go into Google and find volunteering, and I assure you, there's volunteer opportunities. I'm going to go this afternoon. I'm going to go to an organization called Be a Mentor. It's a local organization where we read for kids that are illiterate. They're in first, second, and third grade. They're from really impoverished communities that are, it's really, really, really like serious stuff. I've never seen anything like that before. And so that's how people can help. And then people can help on that level. I think people can help within their own families by turning off the technology, by, one of the things I talk I talk to this with couples, not to text your spouse throughout the day with mindless information, but to talk about it at dinner. Because we've forgotten how to do that. We've forgotten how to tell stories and have these moments of gratitude for what we have, right? For our food, for our homes, for ability to, gratitude is a very powerful tool that I use. And so we're kind of forgotten, there's life is happening around us. I lost a friend on Saturday. From what I understand, it was cancer. And, I'm thinking about this for days because I'm not sure. And I just hope it was cancer. I hope it wasn't self-harm. Because,
sorry,
a woman, and I am, and I'm hearing this stuff, right? Like this is not like, people are really hurting right now. I think there's collective pain. I think COVID left a lot of people in a really traumatized state. And I think those of us that should be, are responsible for lifting, the other people up. And I think social connection is, the reason I set up Project B It's a platform to raise awareness about the importance of social connection. And I say that because I've been so lonely here, and I'm also, like, something also shifted because I spend a lot of time alone, and it's just like I'm built in community because it's really hard and it's not good.
Yeah, I agree. Well, when we were talking about the traumatized state that everyone's living in right now, that's something else to visit.
Listen, that's a tough one. I think the system is set this. I think what's happening right now is just traumatizing people. So I think it's almost we're supposed to be it. I don't know how we're not. And so I think that, I talk about, again, I have tools that I can give to people. I think disconnecting from technology is very important. That's my one, although I think most people will say that sleep is very important. This is an excellent book, Why We Sleep, Matthew Walker. But the reason we're not getting good sleep right now is because we're in technology. And so I think the addiction to technology becomes really important because we have to kind of disconnect. And I think the technology is affecting our circadian rhythm. And because the circadian rhythm is affected and interrupted, I think we're not eating right. I think we're tired. I think we're not moving, exercising. And I'm not talking people have to go and exercise an hour and a half a day and go to a fancy gym and climb Mount Everest. Go for a walk. 15 to 20 minute early morning walk, especially in, when it's a little cooler. It's 105, 70 degrees right now outside. But
oh yeah, it's so hot out there. It's hot. It's pretty hot here too. The mornings are beautiful and less like chaotic activity. They're very calm and serene.
I think it's listen. I think that I am. I've become a lot busy in the last couple of months because I think I offer people tools that are so available and they're free. And I think Plato said, "Let the food be thy medicine." Right? The healing there's incredible amount of healing in nature. The woods, the desert, the beach, a grass, a field, a tree, a park, birds, animals. There's a lot of healing. And so I recommend people do that. I recommend people sleep better. I recommend people not be as connected to the news right now. I think it's really hard. I'm Russian. My stepfather is from Ukraine, and my mom has, he's obviously been so affected. I've been affected. Everybody has been affected, right? I'm against war. When I lived in Russia, Ukraine was part of Russia. I'm obviously not from Putin's Russia. I'm from the Soviet Union. And so what's happening is really heartbreaking, but it's affecting my stepfather in such a way, and he's consuming a lot of his information in the morning. Mm-hmm. And so it sets him in a certain space for the rest of the day. And so I think what, when, and how you're consuming information is really important. And I equate that to what we eat. It's the same way we watch what we put in our bodies. We don't want it to be full of junk. We don't want, and I think you touched upon this before, we don't want our minds to become full of this useless content. I think, Project B and kind of what I do is raise awareness. The little piece of information I just found out, which I think is insane. I heard it on Joe Rogan. He read the user terms of TikTok. I don't have TikTok, but he read the user terms of TikTok. So just, TikTok is a Chinese app. And the way it's used in China is very different than it is in America. In China, it's a propaganda. It's a state-owned app. It's a propaganda channel. So they have news and some kind of propaganda content, and that's it. You can only access TikTok from 8 a.m. till 9 p.m. There's no children's contest on TikTok. There's no dance-off. There's no challenges. That's for us, the Americans. So American kids right now, an American population, TikTok has become much more popular than Instagram. And so Instagram is trying to pivot their platform. That's why the first tab on Instagram now is Reels as opposed to Photos. When you download TikTok app on your phone, that app has access to all your phones, all your photos, your contacts, but also the microphone. And then, it goes further than that, it collects every keystroke that you make on your computer or your phone. I don't know what that information is for, but the Chinese have it. And so last Sunday, Apple issued a emergency message that everybody's got to update their iOS to the next version because there's a virus something. And so I and like millions of other people ran to update their phone. And instead of updating my phone, I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, all these people are updating the phone because they don't want to get the virus, whatever virus this is. But they all have TikTok on their phone.
Yeah.
And so I think, and what Joe Rogan said, he said one of his daughter's friends said to his daughter, I hate your dad because my mom was listening to his podcast and came home and deleted my TikTok. Right? So, because this is really, and so I think for people to know, I think what I think I do best is I arm people with this information, and then if they want, I give them tools to fight back. And you don't have to, I haven't said anything so far. I don't know how long we've been talking. I haven't said one thing where this is what you need to buy.
Yeah, exactly. Right? That's exactly. You don't need to consume a product, buy something, use a technology, go ask a expert. Yeah.
Be bored, right? I've been talking about boredom since I started. I think, I don't know if it's on my website. It's on my website. Mm-hmm. It's one of the, 4 pillars that I think creativity lives in empty space. You can't be creative while your mind is occupied with 70 things and open windows, right? Creativity comes when you're sitting there and you're just like, oh, what do I do? And then, and so I think that's really important. I think Monopoly is really important. I think putting puzzles is important. I think writing. I really, what's the right word? Suggest that parents help their children learn how to write in cursive because studies show that writing in cursive really helps you to be focused and concentrate on things. And, penmanship is very important. It's how our mind should be, so these things that we have forgotten, most people in their 30s do not know how to write cursive. And so when I write them hand notes, they can't read it. And I find it fascinating. And they say, well, what do I need to read? Everything is, and so it's these basic things and to engage people into real life world activities.
Yeah, it's funny. I think they took cursive out of school a lot. I'm pretty sure they did. I had it when I was in, and it's definitely interesting to see what they've taken out of schools, like especially when you get into like mechanics, wood shops, home economics, cooking, like things that have even art and music in a lot of cases, things that have a creative. It's a creative creation and learning at the same time, which is a whole different type of education than getting told a certain way and regurgitating multiple choice answers. That's not where intelligence comes from, if you want to use that word, or wisdom, as I like to contrast it with. It's just you're creating a machinery. And again, going back to the Twitter little snippets, that's really what the machine wants. More machines at the end of the day. And
are you on Twitter?
No, I mean I've had one, but I've never used it really. I think mine says I'm the twittiest Twitterer in Twittertown, and I've never made a tweet.
I think most people that have it all together, are not on Twitter.
Yeah, I agree.
I think Twitter has become, and it will become, an obsolete platform. It already is. It's not I don't know. I'm so detached from that world.
Yeah, I never really got into it. And like you said, you mentioned the space or the B-board. I never get bored just because I'm all like, when there's nothing to do, it just creativity flows. Like if I wake up at 3 a.m., there's usually something just flowing out. Or if I'm walking, you're absorbing the beauty of nature. And then, like it's like turning on a faucet where creativity just flows out, at least for me. And I really enjoy those times. And then, of course, I'm in this, I call it using enemy technology, because I'm like building this thing and understanding that I have to use technology to some degree. I find myself having to learn different technologies and navigate them just to get the message out to pull people back from it, which is, I guess, one of the burdens and the blessings of for me. So I try to put everything in that perspective. Like a burden is a blessing too, because it allows you a perspective to be more present and to recognize the sacrifice being made. And sacrifice is very important to understand, because if you're not suffering intentionally or consciously, you're suffering unconsciously. And we can just look around and see that is the case. If you put yourself like with use sweat lodges, and that's like a conscious version of suffering. It's good, it's healthy, but it's still like you're taking in a pain, and it's helping you become very present. And when you do that, you're less likely to go out and seek your suffering unconsciously in other ways, because you've already went through it. And now you have that gratitude perspective. It's kind of like you crawl through the valley to get to the top of a peak, and now you get an awesome view. But if people just kind of lived on a plateau and never kind of explored the other terrain, I've noticed it creates an environment where people they start lacking gratitude, and they start taking things for granted.
I'm just thinking about what you just said. I've never thought of it this way, but I think that's so powerful. When people go to the sweat lodge, sauna, right, they feel the pain. So I automatically, what resonated with me, sauna, which is Russian banya, right? Banya, it's Russian sauna. It's really popular. It's a healing mechanism, because you go into this hot sauna room and you're beaten with the birches of the trees, right? Because the trees have all this healing. And then in Russia, we run in the snow and we drop into the snow, which lowers your body temperature right away, right? And then you run back into the banya to get the heat. And so that is really uncomfortable, right? Because you're from hot to cold, but it's also very healing, because it gets rid of all the toxins, and kind of your heart start beating, whatever. And I think I don't know, I mean, we can talk about so many things and for so long, but I am a very big supporter of psychoactive therapy, primarily ketamine therapy. And one of the things that I've noticed is that I think people have forgotten that true healing, that healing is painful, right? So let's say you have shoulder surgery tomorrow. While your shoulder will heal for weeks on, you're going to be in pain, right? Because that's the process of healing. And I think we are so used to, and we're so addicted to either medicines or alcohol or substances or technology, because our world is really hard, right? Like, I think these addictions are warranted. I understand them. And I understand them because, like before COVID, I myself personally never dealt with any issues where I needed to be medicated. And then, whatever, just after COVID and some of the stuff that had happened in my life, I needed help, and I turned to ketamine therapy. And so I did, I did ketamine therapy last year, and I've watched what's happened to me in the last year, and how it helped me reset my system, but it also made me look at others suffering in a very different way. And so I understand what loneliness does to people, and I understand why somebody would drink not to feel that pain. And so when I think about that, and I think about the healing aspect, not in a way of other ways to addict, right? Through, recovery, through mindfulness, through nature, through connection, and through really making different life choices. And that's painful, right? To make a choice that you are going to take your body and your mind and your health into your own hands and do these things. It's really, really hard, and it's really uncomfortable. And that's why not a lot of people do it. And I think the reason people aren't able to do it now more than they have even before is because of this way of COVID, right? So we have, it's like the perfect storm,
Yeah, not a lot of people show up, especially when they're walking into uncomfortability. And, we do, with Church of the People for Creator Mother Earth, we do ceremonies in traditional Wamkush for the Payam Pachim, the people of the West, and those we use mushrooms in there sometimes in very large doses, and that is definitely can get uncomfortable, because you're in the depths of your own self, and you're facing everything, seeing stuff, so everything gets very loud in there, and clear. And that process is healing, just as if you had a wound on your leg and it was causing you harm. If you never looked at it and you just let it be, it's going to fester and turn into something worse. Whereas if you actually face it, maybe you got to scrub it, you got to clean that wound out, then it can actually heal. And that is the process of healing. Healing is painful, and that's why the quote medicines that they offer a lot just mask the symptoms and create the illusion of healing, because now you're no longer feeling the pain. But by not feeling the pain, you're also not going through the healing process, and then you're stuck in this loop where you're just masking symptoms, and that's for psychological, emotional, spiritual, physical traumas. This tends to be like what Western allopathic medicine offers to people. It's like, oh, you're feeling uncomfortable, we need to get you to feel comfortable, as opposed to the homeopathic approach is, well, if you're feeling uncomfortable, we need to push through to get that energy moved out, whether that's a splinter in your hand, you need to get it out instead of keeping it in and hiding it, or if that's an emotional trauma, like the other statement is, if you're going through hell, keep on going, keep on going. And if you stop or turn around, you're going to be in hell a lot longer. So there is a redemption. There is another side, but it does take work, honesty, humility, integrity to show up and to be present and to face, yourself, and to actually recognize like, oh, you know what? I need to improve this portion of my life. Maybe I haven't been taking care of myself so well. Maybe I've been a little bit too short with people. Maybe I get in road rage on the highway, and that's not a healthy thing. I used to, like years and years ago, I used to have road rage, and I one day just became like aware of it after the fact, and I literally just said to myself, I'm like, why am I mad at these people? Like, it's just really dumb. I don't need, there's no point in being mad at them because it doesn't change anything, and then I'm just worked up. And so I stopped. I changed my perspective when I went on the road to expect that people would do things that would trigger me into being mad. And then by being aware of it when it happened, I was expecting it. And so it didn't, trigger me into being mad, or when I was able to it didn't consume me. And I did the same thing with news, because Man, I'm way ahead of the curve on that one. Like, this was back in 2007 or before, when I was watching the news. It was on the TV, and I was just like, fuck this shit. I'm over it. I could just turn it off, and I never turned it back on.
You just want to slice your wrist after reading. Listen, I used to read the New York Post is my favorite. I loved reading it when I lived in New York, and I would, right before hopping on the train, I'd read the Post. I read the Post now. It's like, I just want to slice my wrist. It's like, it's a horrific nightmare. I don't know. I try to be an optimist. I think without hope, we have no future. And I'm really, I've done so much ketamine. I really feel that I have these powers to help people. And I'm meeting incredible people that are going through very hard things, and they're really fighting. They're finding new ways. And psychedelics has been a good answer, phenomenal answer, because I think the traditional medicine, I love what you said about fake healing. But that's the world we live in, right? We live in this Instagram feed where I'm like, oh my God, #blessed, while my life is falling apart, right? And so that's kind of the world that seems the norm. And so I think we have to look for things that are real. And I think the system is broken. I think the medicines are not working because, if you're drinking, I don't know if you listen to Dan Huberman. He runs Huberman Lab. He's a Stanford neuroscientist. And, he talks a lot about, sleep and biology and nutrition. And the other day he had this podcast about drinking. I don't really drink. I don't have an addiction with alcohol. I don't really like the way alcohol tastes. And I don't like the way I feel when I drink alcohol. So, it's not my, I'm kind of a control freak, and I like to be in control. That's not a substance. I could have a drink, whatever, no problem. But, oh my God, I listened to this podcast the other day. I had no idea what alcohol really was. And it's poison. It's just, that's what it is. And if you drink a lot of it, it's very big poison. And so a lot of people I know that were used to, I know that a lot of people that take antidepressants and traditional pharmaceutical medications also drink. And I don't know a lot of doctors that say, oh, you want Prozac? No problem, Mark. I'm going to give you Prozac. Are you drinking? Are you exercising? What is your diet like? Are you getting 6 to 7 hours of sleep a night? Who are your friends? How are your relationships? Are you going to work? And if you pass, if all of these things you have, and it's like you're trying and you don't, then I think we can talk about the medication. But, the traditional medications, I hope you know about mushrooms. So the traditional medication, if I'm going to start taking Prozac, if I'm depressed and suicidal today, it's going to take anywhere between 4 to 6 weeks for that medication to get into my system to where I feel better. Where if you do ketamine therapy, you feel better within 45 minutes. And so the difference in how fast your own body can bounce back on psychological. So ketamine helps your body to naturally start the production of serotonin, which is a neurotransmitter that we lack when we are in depression. And so once that process has begun, your body naturally continues to make serotonin. If you go on Prozac and you take Prozac for 3 months and you're on it and you stop taking it, the serotonin stops, right? So one system is set up to give you fish or to teach you how to fish. The other one is to give you fish, right? So the system is not set up for our optimization because the money is in the sickness. It's not in the cure. And so again, everything I talked about, everything I kind of do, and I don't know, I hope you can tell how passionate I am about this. It all comes back to this. It's community, it's food, it's nourishment, it's back to basics. Nothing I'm saying it's like, it's this, I revolutionized this new method of, it isn't. It's just being a good human. It's being grateful. It's being kind. It's teaching our children kindness by showing them kindness. I think it's being kinder to our partners. I think, one of the things I say all the time, for men to buy their wives or girlfriends or baby mamas flowers, just one flower, just pick it. So, just recognition. It's just kindness. It's just kindness. It's very hard to do because people you try to be kind to people today. They're like, they're afraid.
People think it's strange. Definitely.
Yeah.
It's almost like they take offense a lot of times. Like, why are you being what's wrong with this guy? What's wrong with this person? They're being nice, and so that creates a trauma that carries over because then people don't tend. They're punished for trying to be nice, so then they stop being nice, and that disharmonious frequency just sweeps across, and now it's like one person's mad, so they're mad to someone else, or they're off, and then it's a domino effect. But the same note, if you're coming from a harmonious frequency and sharing positivity, spreading not toxic positivity where it's just unaware of things, but true, like genuine good nature and goodwill, and offering to help, or just offering to be there, or just being present for someone, that itself is healing, because then that starts to spread. People start to question, well, why is, if this person can be nice, I could be nice too, or I could be, honest, right? Honest is, these words kind of get tripped up because niceness without honesty isn't actually very nice. But you can do both, you can do both. And part of what I like to say is, if you've got among people, respect, humility, gratitude, it's pretty much, and you're carrying yourself with honor, that you're going to heal yourself. You're going to reflect positively on yourself, and people will see that and experience that, and it will spread. And if you have a community, it could be 10 people, and everyone's carrying themselves with respect and honor and humility and having gratitude, it's going to be a pretty awesome place, even if you're going through some struggles, some trauma, because that you're doing it together. And that's what I take a lot from, whether it's ceremony, whether it's my time in the teams. I've been through a lot of suffering, intentional, but I'd call it positive suffering, where you're seeing other people suffering with you, and you're just driving forward and staying present. And that helps you when you're in, we could call it like a negative suffering, where you didn't want to be there, or some violation happened against what you were trying to do, and now you're dealing with it, or a catastrophe, a natural disaster, or something. You can then move through that trauma with more presence. And it's not like, in the West, they're trying to sell desensitization to where if you want to feel good, then don't feel bad, as opposed to no, if you're feeling bad, then feel bad and recognize why you're feeling bad and acknowledge it, change what you need to change, communicate how you need to communicate, and then move through it. And that's definitely an uncomfortable process, if you haven't done it before. But the more you do it, the more normal it seems. The more time you go into icy water, the easier you can ease into it, or remove the tension, and you can start to feel what that energy is. And that's the same for anger, depression, anxiety. These are all normal things to feel in certain states.
So I like that you say it, because we're supposed to feel bad sometimes, and there's nothing we can do about it. I lost my friend on Saturday. I've cried every day since, including today, and it's just been, and I'm supposed to, there's nothing I can do right now to feel bad. I don't want to feel bad. I don't want to lean into it. I wish I wasn't feeling bad, but I do. And I think that's really important for people to that is an unattainable bullshit to where we're just supposed to be happy all the time, because people are not. It's just not a realistic state. And another thing I wanted to mention to what you were talking about, like, and I call it the system. We're in the system. Mark, we are not allowed to shake people's hands anymore, right? Because the system, if I'm going to shake your hand, you will die, or I will die. That's where we live. You know, I met a woman today that was trying to help me, and I spoke to her, and I wanted to shake her hand, and I could see she was uncomfortable. She was standing like this, right? Mm-hmm. So the system told us that, you know, if you go outside and if you shoot hooves, you will die because COVID will come get you. And, you know, and it was just so crazy. It was so crazy. You can walk into the restaurant and you have to be in a mask until you sit down at the table, or you can take the mask off. So does COVID not live where we at this height, but it does live at this height?
Yeah. It's a traumatic game of Simon Says, where people are forced to do things that don't make sense and then pretend that they make sense. So it's a version of, I call it Stockholm syndrome at the end of the day.
Right. Yeah. This is really big. This is a very big collective, mind bleed. And where, you know, I see it all the time. You know, it's like it's 87 degrees right now with 1,000% humidity. Every day there's a guy that walks around the lake by himself in a mask on. He's alone. There's nobody around him. It's trees, it's palms, and he sings. And I can hear him go, woo! And he's breathing this recycled, you know, and I just look at him every day because I try to imagine the space he lives in, and I can't, right? So that's collectively what the system has done. And so we've got to now figure out how to talk to people and show them by not wearing a mask, by feeling safe. Every morning I do this to him. You know, I acknowledge him. He's never acknowledged me once. It's like, I don't even exist. He doesn't look at my cute puppy. And, you know, and I meet him where he's at. You know, that's where he's at. I make no judgments, but I just try to, and I'm like, man, I would hate being here.
Yeah, it's a conscious creation of, it's like solitary confinement, right? He's like moving through the world isolated from it. It's very sad. You know, I look at, when I see it, it makes me feel a little bit sad, you know, because the level of deception that went on to get people to be that point in their life, and many people are of the mind that they will always do that from now on because they were trained just like a child. If you walk outside without a mask, you will die. And if you go touch other human beings or get too close to them, you will die. So that literally created a conscious, disharmonious thought virus, which is where the real virus is in the mind. And people cannot acknowledge another human being for their own fear of dying, which is actually, you can go into this rabbit hole for a while, but fear and greed are actually, they're partners. They're not really different. You know, if someone is afraid of dying, they're greedy of living, you could say. And that's not to say that you shouldn't be grateful of living, but, you know, I've been around death for a long time, long before this COVID stuff has happened. And I never, just from the nature of the work that I did, you know, and people, you know, veterans would go out, or and even before then, I always had a natural understanding of death, where it's a part of life, it's a cycle. So I didn't want to die, but I didn't have like this this fear of, when the time comes for me to die, the time comes for me to die, and I've already accepted that. So when you've accepted that, then it's time to. Every moment is a blessing. Every moment alive is a beautiful gift. Even the moments that suck really bad. Even the moments where it's like, you know, We've all had various moments. I've definitely had hard moments of my life, many of them, and during it, it sucks. After it, I choose to reflect on how grateful I am to have had the experience for the perspective it gives me. So now I can, for instance, relate to someone else in a similar situation when they're going through it, and I can offer, it's like hiking through a trail and you see someone, they're kind of lost, and you say like, hey, if you go left, here's what you can expect on that road. If you go right, here's what you can expect on that road. Choice is up to you, but you can at least offer a tool for someone to navigate through a point of depression or anxiety or something like that, or offer them a tool, whether that tool be psychedelics or what I like to call earth-based sacraments, or just community coming together, hiking through a trail, restoring some part of the environment, moving rocks and doing some kind of positive work. Someone said that I like, life is giving. If your life gives, and if you're always giving, then you're living. And if you stop giving, that's dying. Like, you're already starting to die. So when you start being like really closed off, whether it's covering in a mask, hiding, like the dying process that people are trying to avoid is already underway. Because another way I look at death is like life is moving, it's in motion. Your cells, your body, your lungs, your heart, everything's moving. Death is a cessation of the movement, right? One of the components of death is like the physical body stops to move. And so moving in motion, breathing, communication, interaction, that is living. You look at a bird, and what's the bird doing? Flying around, going to flowers, checking things out, looking around, singing songs. That's what life is. Life is not to isolate, hide in a box, throw a mask on, don't breathe the beautiful fresh air that we have, even though for sure there's pollution that's gone on. That's no secret. But at the end of the day, if you're out in nature, you're getting some good medicine from the air.
The pollution is the least of our worries right now.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Pollution at the moment. There are incredible opportunities, I think, I don't know, again, I think without hope, there's no future. And I'm worried, I'm not old enough to hear that so many people are dying. And I don't know what happened the last 2 weeks. Even since Saturday, I've kind of been talking to a lot of my friends, and since my friend died, and they all know somebody who just died. And I'm not 65 or 55. I'm kind of young still, and so I helped a friend earlier today because I think he's in a lot of trouble, and it's like he's struggling. And I think, Johann Hari has this incredible quote. He talks a lot about addiction. He has a really great TED Talk, and he has this quote that is just incredible. And he says, the opposite of addiction is not sobriety. The opposite of addiction is connection. And it's actually based on this experiment called the Rat City. I don't know if you know about this, but, they took a rat and put it in a maze in a cage alone and put a cocaine drip, and then the rat was alone in it, took so much cocaine it killed itself. And then they built a rat city where there's a lot of rats and there's a cocaine drip, and so the rats would take the drip, but none of the rats killed themselves because they were busy doing stuff and running around. Yeah. And so, and so I think community, I think kindness and gratitude are incredibly powerful free tools with nature and real food. That is, for me, it's been incredibly empowering. And so when we connected and you asked me what I talk to, and I know this conversation has been a little bit all over the place, but when I do these facilitations, I talk about the importance of these 7 basic things like sleep and movement, nutrition, and community, and detox and technology, and purpose and work. And then the second big thing I talk about is the importance of real human connection, much less digital technology, apps, games, anything in the computer. It gives you this fake sense of everything. And so we're not able to live in real reality. And real reality is just not always colorful and fast and pretty. Sometimes, there's just blank moments in our lives and we just got to ride it and believe and know that we're learning and healing. And, there's something bigger that awaits us. We also have to build it. Mm-hmm. And people jump into these spaces that they all have. Have a system. I think we can really make a dent in our collective well-being. And I think it starts from individual communities and raising awareness, and people reach out and talk about it too. I hope I'm going to implement this at a personalized level, and that's how I try to help what I see as the issue.
Yeah, no, I think that's honestly, it's the only way that I see it is people have to get back to community, familial connections, heal the individual, to heal the world and focus on local environment, which is why Guardian Grange is the way that it is set up this way, because things drifted away from that. People used to behave and act in that way locally. We didn't have access to know what's going on all over the place. And we still don't actually. We still don't know what's going on all over the place. We just know what's being told about certain specific places. But as far as the whole world goes, there's a lot of places that no one's paying attention to right now. And that diminishes everyone in those places because they're like, oh, they're talking about X, Y, and Z place, this topic, that topic. That doesn't relate to me. And it's all blasted over this whatever, television, news, entertainment. And it's all bullshit at the end of the day. It's not real. It's fake. And everything that I push myself into and the people around me is to be more checked in to reality at the deepest level possible, to address the issues that are here, to bring positivity towards transforming those things, but to also be real about, like, here are these problem issues that need to be addressed by someone who's going to do the work, or some people who are going to do the work. And it's not the system that has been in existence that has created or facilitated the outcome that we're experiencing right now. So, I think it's very important to focus on very simple things, like we've been saying over and over again. And it's important to say them over and over again because it's very easy for people to forget, because you leave this conversation and boom, a million messages will be popping up, texts, applications, emails, whatever. I've been notoriously not looking at my email for a long time, so then I miss things and I got to get back. But it's like I also have the mind of like, well, this is just what I'm like. It's so overwhelming, just the amount of information. Where it's like I need to take time to check out, and then I go through and follow up, and it's a lot. It's a lot of there's a lot of energy spinning in this world that is wanting us to pull away from where we're supposed to be, which is right here where we're at.
I think that it's really powerful. When I send you my follow-up email, most of the time when I send somebody a first email, it goes into junk. I don't know why. So when I was following up, I just wanted to make sure it wasn't sitting in junk. I actually, when I work with people, and one of the first thing we talk about is, that's why what I do is really individualized. It's not the same across the board because everybody has an individual job and they have different responsibilities. But I think putting guardrails and a system around your technology use is really important. And I talk a lot about technology use in terms of sex addiction and food addiction, right? Because it's not like alcohol and drug addiction. Drug addiction, your ultimate goal is abstinence. But you can't do that with sex or food, right? You can't abstain from sex or food. And you can't abstain from technology. And so I think there's a difference if you're drinking 2-3 drinks a night every night, or if you have a glass of wine once in a while. And so the same thing about email or text or whatever, however you use the phone. It's one thing if you get up in the morning and you have a phone glued up your, butt. But it's a completely other thing is, depending on what you do, so for me, I do the emails in the morning and then, for about 20 minutes, I'll check for everything. And then that's it. I don't kind of sit down behind my computer much later. All these things before. And so I have these certain window frames. And if there's ever anything urgent, you can always call me. They can dial the phone and, so far nothing really has been urgent at all. Yeah. I just don't have an emergency. I know it's different for other people, but, I think these are the things. So, don't take the phones into the bathroom. Don't take the phones into stores because have an interaction. I go to Trader Joe's a lot. Everybody knows me because I walk around. I'm like, oh, hello. Because during COVID, I was here and I was alone. And for the first 6 months, I didn't touch another human being. Everybody were in a pod and I just moved here. So my only interaction with people was sometimes outside, walking my dog and going into stores. And it was really important for me because I moved from New York City surrounded by friends and community and family and life to Charleston, and I was just alone. And it really impacted me in a very, very negative way. And that's why my work has just become so important. So when people say, what drives me is because I really I feel the loneliness and isolation. And I hate this way of communicating. This is like now blurry. It's like so crazy, but this is, so I know this is not normal. This is not FaceTime. This is you and I talking through a computer.
Yeah.
FaceTime is when you're facing another human, and we need to remember the language that the system is trying to tell us. Social media. Instagram is not social. It's antisocial. There's nothing social about it. It's you sitting in a room by yourself in the dark looking at somebody else's pictures. It's like you can talk.
Yeah, that's a good way to reframe it for sure. Because that is a lot of what it is. And if society was in a more healthy state, it could be a beautiful thing. I remember when I started on Instagram, all I would do is take random pictures of, just things like nature, leaves, things that had no meaning. And then it slowly, or not no meaning, had meaning just by the beauty of witnessing them. And then, to now what Instagram has become, it went away from sharing photographs to sharing memes and
suicide and anorexia, bulimia, and selling
traumas.
Right, and changing, what is it called, catfish? This is really, listen, I've been talking to, my background is in real estate. I was a broker in New York City, and so a couple of weeks ago I spoke to one of the top brokers in New York City, David Mark, and he was talking about how different the generational gaps between everything is, right? And so what the technology used to be and what it is for now is really different. And it's pushing people, all these new behaviors, ghosting, and there's this new phenomenon called quiet quitting. I don't know if you've heard about it.
No.
It's you hiring me, to be your manager and me going through the whole hoopla of meeting you, your other team members, you're getting me on the payroll, everything, me showing up and not liking my first day of work and never coming back again.
Wow.
I have never heard of this bullshit before. What?
Yeah.
It's the same thing as ghosting. These are new phenomenons, right? But this is crazy, uncivilized, unhuman. I'm unable to be a normal human being. And first of all, I don't know anybody. I've never met anybody who quit their jobs on the first day.
That's pretty cool. Yeah, what's the point of even going in? It's definitely it's a symptom of sickness, because I think a lot of people, number one, aren't pursuing any kind of passion or living with some purpose to their life, and so it's become very bland and gray, and all the color has been sucked out of like living for a lot of people, which is another reason why people go into certain drugs and drinking to escape reality, or to try to escape reality, which I always say, like, you can't escape reality. It's always going to be there when you come down from the high, or reality is always going to be here to be.
You can make your reality better. I think, I think in America, if I was talking to somebody in another country, so that's the thing, like, it's funny that we've come full circle, right? So I was raised in the Soviet system. And I know right now, everybody hates Russian people, which is really hard because I'm not at all responsible for what's going on in Putin's Russia right now. But one of the things that I was raised with is tremendous pride in where I was from. And one of the things I really love, and I thank my mom for, is bringing me to America. I love America. I'm a very big patriot, and I'm so grateful to be here. And I think giving gratitude and raising awareness of how great our country is. It's not like what you said. It's not perfect. It's far from perfect, but it's better than anywhere else. And I think being grateful and for, first of all, the service that, there are people that have literally sacrificed their lives so we could live. I'm very much aware of that. And so I think that becomes really important. If you live in America right now, anywhere you are at this moment, you can make your experience better. You can go get a job. You can go get help. You can get into a treatment program. You can get clothes. You can get help. This is it's hard and it's not easy, but it's a possibility. If you live in other countries, that's, I know places in the world where this doesn't exist, where an option of getting better, having just being able to pursue something to help yourself is not possible. And so I think, I don't know, for me, I find that very powerful, right? Like, I find that I don't know how much people would if they're in trouble, but I don't know. I think in America, you can make your experience better. You just have to work, and it's really hard, but you can.
Absolutely, yes. It is showing up and doing the work, and we are, for all the faults, there's many blessings of being able to, number one, have a voice that doesn't get stomped out immediately or silenced, even though that has become more of a thing over the years. But you still have, at the end of the day, the ability to express yourself freely, and communities have the ability to exist and provide the connection that the system, or the civilization, which I like to call uncivilization, has created and set up. Because the ultimate power of humans is connectivity, the ability to connect and to communicate and to share ideas and to have a conversation and to disagree without, disrupting, devolving into war. I mean, I've been to war, come from a warrior, but I don't lust it. I don't want it. I don't think that it is a necessary thing. It's a thing that results from egos having a conflict with the nature of reality at the end of the day, and wanting to exert control and force over whether that's nature, other human beings, which are also nature, the higher power, like, or this pursuit to be the highest power, which many egomaniacs are pursuing, whether that's through like a corporate enterprise or through a government position. The archetype is the same, where it's pursuit of power at all cost, or wealth, or whatever concept people are chasing that isn't just a humble perspective of reality and the fact that we're one person among many people and the world isn't revolving around us. We're here to contribute and to make this place as awesome as it can be. And anything that's deviated from that is what I call it just a confusion, because if someone wants to, create chaos or trauma, then that person, the nicest way I can put it, is confused, right? And I think that's honestly the most true way of putting it, is there's a confusion, because when you get to the core of any human being, we all know what is right or good versus what is wrong. We know what it's like to harm someone or to be harmed, and we don't like to be harmed ourselves. So therefore, if we're doing it to another person, we know what it's like if the shoe was on the other foot, and if there was really that, again, respectful, humble, grateful way of existing with honor, then a lot of the traumas would cease. Even someone from a space of severe trauma may want to pass that forward. But in reflection, we can say, no, if I want trauma to end, I can't now create my own brand of trauma to try to get back at somebody or whatever the group, the thing, whatever it is. We have to live in a positive direction, creating, growing. That's why Guardian Grange is in the business of growing and nurturing life and community, and not attacking or protesting or any of this stuff, because people have protested and revolted and done all these things across the entire world for a long time, and it always goes in a circle. And the only way to change that is to break the circle, and now you're evolving instead of revolving. John Trudell had a good quote about that, where it was something to the effect of, there's no revolutionary solutions, only evolutionary solutions. Or Buckminster Fuller was another one who I like. He's like, you don't change the existing paradigm by fighting against it, but by creating a completely new one. Yeah. So I think that's my philosophy, at least, and that's where I spend my energy, and try to share that story and that vision with others to hopefully resonate, to get massive positive transformation going in my own way. And I know there's other people doing it. You're doing it. A lot of people are doing it. And I think there's this collective conscious evolution that's going on, and people are taking their own perspectives and pushing it forward. And that's a beautiful thing to see from all the chaos, or amidst all the chaos, as there is a clear, coherent stream of consciousness that is focused on doing good, positive things. So I appreciate it.
I think we're finding each other, right? Mm-hmm. Like, like-minded individuals tend to, I don't know if it's energy or the higher calling or the mutual interest, but, I think that's how the world will become healthier, is by this local effort.
I agree. And I really appreciate the time. I'd like to do another one sometime. We can expand, because there's a lot of topics that we covered. And perhaps we could collaborate on some kind of project for veterans in the future. And really looking forward to it. Yeah.
I would love to. If I can help in any way that I can, it would be my pleasure. I so much respect, and I'm so grateful for the service. You have no idea. It's, I'm kind of really